Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Stories. First up today, we have I Swear Schools Are Haunted. My experiences by burner user 918812. I'm thoroughly convinced schools and college campuses are haunted, and I'm truly fascinated by who and what spirits are lurking in the hallways. Why? Why is their soul entrapped in an educational building? Who were they that they decided to attach themselves to this institution? There are two incidents that happened to me at the same location. I keep thinking about them, so I thought I'd share. I'm from a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone's cousin. We don't have a lot of dark history in our town, but that doesn't stop the eerie experiences that can occur. Back in 2009, of my senior year of high school, the school was holding an assembly in the morning for the graduating class. Me and my friend just happened to be in junior class study hall when the assembly was taking place. Her and I asked the teacher if we could just leave early and head to the auditorium. The teacher agreed, and my friend and I went to the main office, asked if we could sit in the auditorium and wait for the rest of our class. The secretary at the front desk gave us permission and told us to just be quiet. My friend and I picked some seats on the far end of the auditorium, popped up our feet, and listened to some music on our MP3 player while we waited for our class to arrive and the assembly to start. A few songs later, I developed an unsettling feeling. All of a sudden, I felt uncomfortable, just me and her, in the dim-lit auditorium. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. My friend seemed lost in the music, so I didn't bring it up. Moments later, a shadow ran down the aisle full sprint and disappeared, running straight into the stage. I froze, and I felt my friend tense up. I looked towards the doorway, curious if any shining light can cast a shadow. However, this was no ordinary shadow. It was not up against the wall or cast at an angle. It was completely dimensional and looked like a male child about 10 or 12 years of age. Despite that, I clearly wanted to find a logical explanation, but there was none. My friend was quiet. I said nothing. Even though it was seconds, it felt like forever. I turned to my friend and asked, "Did you see that?" She replied, "You mean that shadow?" I nodded, and she said, "Yes." We quickly got up and left the auditorium and went to the bathroom. While in the lavatory, we decided that it was 100% a shadow and not a reflection. We hung out in the bathroom until we heard the senior class come down for the assembly. My friend and I never discussed it again, nor did we ever mention it to anyone. I never forget this instance, and years later, another occurrence in the high school's auditorium completely solidified that it's haunted. Flash forward to 2014, and I'm fresh out of college, and just recently hired at the high school I attended more than 4 years ago. It was summertime, so schools are vacant. This sometimes gives them an eerie feeling, especially if you are alone and the lighting is down low. You might think you're in a prison or abandoned hospital ward if you did not know you were in a school. The summertime brings a lot of deliveries that the teachers and staff need for the school year to start, and out of convenience we store all shipments in the auditorium. I was alone in the auditorium and sorting through all the deliveries, separating them to be brought to different locations and classrooms. I then heard voices. A female and a male were having a conversation, but it was just muffled enough that I could not hear words. Just the sound of their voices. I turned and quickly scanned the auditorium to see if anyone was in there with me. No one. Curious, I made my way down to the auditorium to check on the stage to see if maybe a custodian and a secretary were back there discussing something. The voices were still talking, and neither faded or got louder the closer I approached the stage. I made my way through the small corridor and checked behind the curtain. No one. I still heard the voices, but had trouble pinpointing exactly where they were coming from. I made my way back to the seating area and over to the back of the auditorium where the control panel, sound equipment, and computer are, thinking maybe something accidentally switched on. I checked all the appliances and equipment, and everything was off and not emitting any type of sound or noise. What the heck? I wondered. It was then that I got an uneasy feeling. The same sensation I felt years before when I was a senior and me and my friend were hanging out in the auditorium. I went to go leave the auditorium. Before leaving, I turned back to listen to the voices. They were still carrying on some type of conversation. Annoyed, I left and went to the main office. I asked the secretary if anyone was in the auditorium, or if the custodians were expecting anyone. Summertime also comes with a lot of maintenance and facility work, so I was curious if a company was there looking at something. The secretary, to her knowledge, did not know of anyone scheduled to visit the building, but she paged the head custodian to come down and ask. While we were waiting for the head custodian, the secretary asked us what was going on. I said, "There are people talking in the auditorium." She gave me a quizzical but knowing look. The custodian came into the main office and confirmed that no crews were scheduled to come to the school that day. The secretary looked at me, smiled, and said, "Tell him." I told him that I heard two people talking in the auditorium. He rubbed his beard and smirked. "Yep, I've had similar experiences too. Some of the other guys too." "No way," I exclaimed. He said, "Oh yeah, pretty sure it's haunted." He whipped out his cell phone and texted some of his co-workers to come down to the main office. A couple more custodians showed up to the main office, and we started discussing our experiences in the auditorium, and swapping more ghost and haunting stories. "And the principal makes fun of me when I say I don't want to go to the auditorium by myself because I find it creepy in there," the secretary shouted. We laughed and tried to figure out who would be haunting the high school auditorium. We couldn't think of anything significant that happened in town. One of the custodians mentioned that he believes the other schools are haunted too. Needless to say, any time I was in the auditorium, especially alone, I would bring a flashlight, my phone, and prop the door open. And second story today is George Appleseed, the Friendly Ghost. This is by Linker of Fire. Hello all. I just had a lot of interesting paranormal events happen in my life, but I wanted to share what might just be my earliest. Though the title of this post sounds a bit ridiculous, I always refer to this particular ghost I witnessed as George Appleseed, for reasons that will soon become clear. From what I could tell, he was friendly, though he did give me and my mom a good shock. Here's the story of George Appleseed. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, not one anymore, thankfully, and part of our ministry was starting what we'd call return visits with people we'd find going door to door. Basically, if the person said we could come back after the first conversation, we'd come back at the same time the following week. Well, my mom had a very kind elderly return visit I'll call Gertrude for the sake of privacy, if she's even still alive. My mom had been visiting Gertrude for almost a year by this point. I always loved going with my mom to see Gertrude because she always had a bunch of cool books for sale. Selling used books was her elderly woman's side hustle, I guess. She always kept a healthy stock of my favorite childhood books, the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stine, to be precise, and would give me money every time we visited. With this housekeeping out of the way, onto the event. The visit started like any other. My mom and I walked up the decrepit front steps of Gertrude's upstate New York home, opened the creaky shutter door, and walked into her enclosed front porch. Boxes of used books were stacked and scattered about as they usually were. My mom then knocked on the door and waited patiently for Gertrude to make her way out. After a minute, Gertrude opened the door, greeted us warmly, and stepped out onto the enclosed front porch with us. She was sporting her usual nasal cannula and a thick tube leading to an oxygen tank inside the house, keeping the inside door wide open. My mom and her started chatting it up a bit, and out of nowhere, she says the line that gives me the creeps. "I hope you don't mind if we have company today. George is here to visit." We both looked around for someone else, but there was only the three of us standing there. We were confused as to who she was referring to. Confused, I asked Gertrude, "Who's George?" She looked at me and said, "Oh, well, you know how in your Goosebumps books there's sometimes a ghost." I nodded. "George is like that. He's a ghost." I nodded again, and my mom quickly tried to change the topic so I wouldn't be scared. Gertrude was excited to talk about George, though, and eventually told us his story. Basically, George was some guy from the late 19th or early 20th century, who traveled all over the U.S. planting apple trees in every state, hence the take on Johnny Appleseed. Gertrude pointed to an apple tree that was only a few feet from the side door of the porch. Somehow I'd never noticed the tree before, but sure enough, there was an apple tree right there. He planted that tree, however many years ago, and every year he comes back for a few days to check on it. She explained. Found this fascinating, but my mom was still eager to move on. She basically went, "Huh, interesting, so anyways, about the Bible," and tried to move the conversation in a biblical direction. I can't remember when in that conversation it happened, but as my mom and Gertrude were talking, the inside door slammed shut with great force, startling me and my mom. Gertrude was absolutely calm, as if it was just an ordinary occurrence. Keep in mind, the door slammed shut over Gertrude's very thick oxygen tube. The tube was almost bent all the way closed, cutting off the oxygen. Gertrude just went, "Yeah, that was George. He was listening in." My mom and I were a bit weirded out, but my mom leaned over to me and said, "It was just a gust of wind, nothing to worry about." Even at 7 or 8 years old, I wasn't buying this explanation. First of all, the door slammed shut super hard from the inside. A gust of wind would have had to travel from the complete other side of the house into the back of the open door with enough force to slam it over an oxygen tube. Not happening. Second of all, there was no wind. It was a calm autumn day in upstate New York. Years later, my mom admitted she was just trying to keep me from being scared with her explanation. They kept talking Bible stuff while little me decided to wander around the porch for a bit. I went over to the boxes of books and was checking them out. I found a cool children's book about robots or something that I wanted to get, and as I'm standing there looking at it, I hear creaking footsteps all around me. Of course, there's nobody there but myself. The sound of footsteps was very clear, however. At that point, I did get creeped out and went back over to my mom and Gertrude with the book. As they were talking, I looked through the front window of her house. I should probably explain that the enclosed front porch had a mesh section that you could see out of, which was how I was able to look through the front window, and saw the shadow of a man standing there. The shadow was rather detailed. It appeared to be a man with a sharp jawline wearing something like a trench coat. I told my mom all this later, and she didn't believe me. Anyways, we left, and I got a book, so I was happy. Every now and then I bring up George to my mom, and we both just laugh because of how weird it was. I never got an unfriendly vibe from George, just one of pride and protection. Oh, and if anybody knows or can find the identity of George, I'd be greatly appreciative. Thanks for listening. And third story today is Still Haunts Me Today by Sad Assistant 6093. I used to rent a flat in Leeds, one of those tall Victorian terraces that had been hacked into student housing decades ago. From the outside, it looked almost grand. Tall windows, soot-stained brick and iron railing out front. But inside, it was the usual patchwork, paper-thin walls, carpets that smelled faintly damp, and floorboards that shrieked if you so much as shifted your weight. It wasn't perfect, but it was cheap. And when you're a student, cheap is king. At first, it was just an old house. Drafty, yes. Moody plumbing, sure. But nothing I couldn't live with, until winter set in. That's when I started waking up, always around 3 in the morning. I'd sit bolt upright, heart pounding, certain I'd heard something. It was always the same sound, the floorboards in the hallway creaking. Now, in a house that old, creaks aren't unusual. But this wasn't the random groan of timber, this was the rhythmic, steady, like footsteps slow and deliberate, creeping closer. I asked my housemates, half expecting them to laugh and confess they were sneaking around, but they swore they were asleep. and every morning without fail the locks were bolted from the inside. No one had gone out, no one had come in. Weeks passed, and the pattern didn't break. I'd wake up at 3, hear the creak, then silence. Some nights it stopped halfway down the hall. Others it came right up to my bedroom door. I started leaving the lamp on at night, but it didn't help. The light only made the shadows under the door sharper, and that's where I began to notice them, the shadows of feet. At first I thought my mind was playing tricks, but no, there they were, still waiting. The weight of something pressed close to the other side of the door. I never opened it. One night, I decided to be brave. Or stupid. I sat up in bed, covers pulled tight, and I waited. Sure enough, at 3 o'clock the boards began to complain. Creak, pause, creak, closer and closer, until they stopped right outside. I fixed my eyes on the thin gap beneath the door, the faint strip of light where shadows betray what stands beyond. There they were, just as I'd seen before, 2 solid shapes, motionless. Then something happened that froze the blood in my veins. The shadows changed. Instead of walking away, they lowered, slowly, deliberately. They dropped down until the dark shape stretched flat against the door. Whoever, whatever, was outside my door wasn't standing anymore. It was lying there, listening. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think I even blinked. I just sat there, locked in a staring contest with the space under the door, waiting for the shadow to move again. Eventually, the first pale light of dawn crept in, and the hallway was empty. After that, I stopped pretending. I slept in the library some nights. I started carrying my keys everywhere, even inside the flat. And still the footsteps came, sometimes faint, sometimes heavy, always around 3, always stopping at my door. When my lease finally ended, I almost didn't bother mentioning it to the landlord, but at the last minute I did, half a joke, half a confession. He didn't laugh, he went pale. "Which room were you in?" he asked. When I told him, his face tightened. He explained that before the partitions, the whole house had been one unit. Back in the 1950s, a man who lived there had been found dead in the hallway, stretched out flat, face down, right outside what later became my bedroom door. They never figured out why he was lying there or what he'd been doing in those final moments. I moved on. Different city, different life, but even now, years later, if I wake up in the small hours, I hold my breath and listen. Because sometimes in the silence, I swear I hear it again. The slow creak of the footsteps, the pause outside the door, and then the dreadful shifting sound as something lowers itself to the floor. And fourth story today is Radio Station Handyman by a Sterling MacDonald. Just after I finished high school, 1990s, I was in a band with a few other guys. One of them was friends with someone who owned a local AM radio station. After the station finished all of its live programming for the night, everyone would go home and they would switch to a pre-recorded track of music and ads that would play through the night. The radio station had been in continuous operation since the 1930s and had a ton of professional recording equipment, much of which was not even being used anymore, just sitting in the basement untouched. The owner of the station gave us a set of keys and let us go there after hours to practice playing and record our music. First night I was there, right around 3 a.m., suddenly things started to feel kind of weird. The whole room got noticeably chillier, and I had these odd prickling sensations. When I commented on it, the other guys who'd been going there for a while already, and the one who knew the owner had grown up in and around the radio station, laughed and said, "Oh, that's just Gene." Gene, I discovered, had been the sort of jack-of-all-trades for the radio station back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Handyman, custodian, electrician, fixing the plumbing, audio technician. He did a little bit of everything. He basically was the guy who could be counted on to keep the place running no matter what. He actually lived in an apartment above the station itself. He would come downstairs to start work at 3 a.m., getting everything prepped and ready for the early morning broadcast. Sometime in the late 1970s he passed away, seemingly peacefully, in his apartment up above the station. But apparently missed the memo on that and just kept coming to work anyway. His apartment was still mostly untouched. We had keys for the whole building, including his apartment, and visiting it felt very surreal. Very old, dusty furniture and carpet, wallpaper peeling and showing signs of age. But still somehow felt lived in, even though nobody had lived there for nearly 20 years. Anyway, most nights that we were there past 3 a.m., that same routine would happen. Chilly air, odd feeling sensations. It didn't happen every time, but more often than not. Frequently we would be playing something and then we'd all stop because we felt it at the same time, and someone would check the time. Sure enough, it was 3 a.m., right on time. After we'd been doing this for several months, we were recording a demo. I was really struggling to get the sound I wanted just right with the Fender Rhodes. The other guys decided to call it a night, and they left me with the key to finish figuring out my recording setup, and then lock up when I was done. I wasn't afraid of Gene, but I definitely intended to be long gone by 3 a.m. I didn't really want to have a solo experience with him. A big thunderstorm rolled in as the guys were leaving, but I didn't really think anything of it. I went back down to the basement and worked on my recording setup. Around 1:30 a.m., I guess lightning must have hit the transformer for the block or something. There was a big bang sound and all of the power in the building died. I'll not lie, I was definitely scared. I was deep in the bowels of the building with no lights on, and though I'd been there a few months, I wasn't that confident about navigating it in the dark, and I had no idea where the breakers were or anything like that. I decided I would make my way out, lock up, drive home, and then call my bandmate to let him know what had happened, so that he could contact the owner and let him know the power had gone out. I gathered up my things, best I could, and had made it as far as the door to the studio room in which I was recording, when suddenly I felt the temperature drop, and the Gene feeling very strongly. I knew it was way before 3 a.m., but the feeling was unmistakable. Then I heard it. Footsteps coming down the hall. Then I heard the footsteps stop right outside the door where I was standing. I will admit I was pretty freaked out. I just called out explaining what I was doing there, and ending with something like, "And I have no idea how to get the power back on, so I'm just gonna sit tight in here and let you do your thing." I fumbled my way back to the chair and sat holding my breath. I didn't hear any more footsteps, so I wasn't sure if he was still standing there or what. After about 5-10 minutes, or one eternity, when you're desperately trying to hold your breath, I hear a click, and my heart just about froze. I thought the door was opening, but the door stayed closed. And then I heard 2 more clicks, and then, from upstairs, the sound of the system coming back on. Another click, and lights way down the hall came back on. 2 more clicks, and lights in my room finally came back to life. I quickly gathered my things again, left locked up, and drove home. I called my bandmate to let him know what had happened, and he groaned and said, "Ugh, if it all went down, that means the broadcast stopped. I'll have to go in and get it back on the air." Then he paused and turned on his radio to find the station was live after all. It was running about 15 to 20 minutes behind where it should have been, but it was live. Gene had apparently saved the day. That was definitely my most intense encounter with Gene or any kind of paranormal anything. After that, I didn't volunteer to stay behind by myself at the station anymore. Overall, it was, relative to some of the experiences I've heard from others, super tame and safe, but it definitely did feel very hair-raising at the time. The station has changed hands a couple of times since then, and no longer records any live or original programming. It's all just simulcast from some other station now. I don't know if Jean's apartment is still intact. After COVID lockdown, the town, about an hour west of New York City, just over the Pennsylvania border, became kind of a bedroom community. For New Yorkie commuters, the residential housing prices skyrocketed, so I wouldn't be surprised if the new owners decided to renovate the apartment and find some new renters. But it's definitely something I still think about every time I'm in that neighborhood. Hope you enjoyed hearing about my experience with Gene, the friendly local radio station handyman. Still, the idea of being dead and still having to go to work. And the fifth and final story today is a subscriber story. They didn't say don't name them, so this is Ghost Hunting, Don't Touch That School by Eve Stevens. 14 years ago, I was part of a paranormal group. Ghost hunting, I should say. We were far from what you would call a professional group, but we took the work seriously, each with our own special ability, and we never charged anyone a penny. We also wouldn't take any offer of money for our help. There were around 12 of us, but not all of us hunted at the same time. We had to take clients on around our working and life schedules, so each excursion was comprised of different team members. We didn't have much in the way of equipment, a few micro-recorders, a couple of EMF detectors, a dozen handheld radios, a few cameras with tripods, and our cell phones. Our group differed from others as we were faith-based, each of us having a deep belief in God or something in a higher plane that was bigger than us. Some Christian, a couple of Catholics, and a couple of the Jewish faith, and one who was spiritual. Strange mix, I know, but it worked for us. We also had other weapons at our disposal, such as vials of anointed oil, holy water, copies of the Bible, blessed rosaries, anointed crosses, dirt from the Holy Land, containing iron shavings, and a piece of stone taken from Jesus' burial chamber. We also kept copies of St. Michael's Prayer in English and Latin. I'm the only one who could read the Latin. I wouldn't give the name of our group because some still require anonymity due to their work and personal lives, so I also won't name names of the team members. Our founder was a woman who was a devout Catholic converted to Christianity and an empath. An empath being someone who can feel the emotions and physical trauma of others, including those who have passed. We had other empaths, but none as strong as our founder, Wanda. Now, when I became part of the group, it had already been established for 8 years. I was asked by a friend in the group if I wanted to tag along one trip, and being me, I said absolutely. What they didn't know at the time was that I have my own unique ability. I can tell what type of energy or ghost is present. I know if it is human or non-human, demon or an evil entity, and its intent. I don't know why that is, nor do I know how I'm able to distinguish them apart. I just know that I can. However, I believe, in part, it has something to do with me being baptized young, turning my back on my beliefs, and practicing dark magic, and then converting back to Christianity years later. I won't go into my childhood trauma, but for me it was severe. I can say that my past exploration into different faiths and belief systems left me with the ability to tap into a world that most fear to tread. You can call me stupid if you want, I don't care, but I have no fear of the dark realm, no fear of Satan or his demons, no fear of evil entities or evil human souls lingering about. God doesn't give one fear. That does not mean I go into hunts to intentionally provoke what is there. Sometimes it is necessary, but even in doing so, you must still show some level of respect. As humans, we can't physically fight what can't be seen, but they can surely attack us. Normally a psychological warfare, but it can turn physical depending on what is present. On this particular hunt, we were there to help a family-owned business, whose family members were having issues at their place of work and home. I, Wanda, one other woman, and 2 guys were called in. The guys were jokesters. They used pranks and jokes to alleviate tension and elevate the group's mood during hunts. Tactics not always used at the best possible time, but it was their way of coping, so we overlooked it after bouts of laughter. The location was a warehouse where custom parts were made for cars and trucks, parts not found on the market. It was your typical warehouse, large open area with different workstations and equipment, a front office, men's and women's restrooms, each with 2 stalls and 2 sinks, and a break room/kitchenette. I am normally not the first one to go in, Wanda likes to do that. But on this occasion I could feel something was not quite right when we pulled into the parking lot. Wanda started to complain of a headache and asked if I would go first. This was usually her first sign when something strong was present. The owner's son met us to let us in the building and left. We normally do not want the owners present because it can affect our findings. Plus, they get copies of all our recordings when we're finished with the investigation. I didn't notice anything unusual when I walked in. No sudden movements, no noise. Smelled like metal and oil. Much of what I expected. The rest of the team trailing in behind me. One of the guys decided it was a good time to fart and ripped one so loud it echoed off the walls. It sounded like I was standing right next to a ship's foghorn. I heard the other guy say, "Man, what did you eat? Your butt smells like rotten eggs." The sudden onslaught of noxious gas filled my sinus cavity to the point I wanted to vomit. After the laughter died, I had a thought and asked, "What did you eat last night?" He replied, "Sorry, I had a steak and potato with salad. Salad makes me gassy." I responded, "Hold on, guys, salad farts don't smell like that." Everyone went pale. We continued on to the production floor, and I was hit with the smell of death, rotting flesh, and iron. Now, the rotting flesh scent could be coming from a dead animal in the rafters, or behind some equipment, and the iron scent could be just that, iron from the welding. But combined with the scent of sulfur, well, it made the hair all over my body stand up. Something you should know about ghost hunting and smells. Not all hauntings have a particular smell attached to them, but most of them do. It could be the lingering scent of a perfume or cologne that the departed once wore, fresh flowers for a loved one, or no scent at all. Those are what you hope for, but there are opposing scents as well, the smell of iron and blood, rotting flesh, or something unnatural, sulfur for demons. But if you have one entity that exhibits all three disgusting scents, you may have a big problem. That combo is usually attributed to an upper-level demon, and that is not something I or any of the team are equipped to deal with. But we must continue. After expressing my thoughts to the others, we took note and moved on. With the smells lingering, I continued further into the space, taking notice of the workstations and which ones had chairs or rolling stools and which ones didn't. Using the flashlight on my phone, I searched around for a possible source of the stench. I found a dead lizard, but that has since reduced to skeletal remains, so no smell there. I found nothing more, nor did the others. The other woman with us had one of those military-grade high-beam flashlights, and searched the ceiling, but it was your standard metal roof with metal crossbeams. Nowhere for an animal to hide. So I started focusing on listening. I began to hear what I can only describe as a low rolling thunder off in the distance, like the ones you can just hear as a thunderstorm rolls in. Wanda suddenly appeared beside me and asked, "Did you hear that? It sounded like something rolling." I nodded yes, and she pointed towards the back welding station. We walked over and didn't hear anything else, but I noticed the rolling stool was nowhere to be found. I previously counted 3 stools, 2 up front and 1 in the back, so I yelled out, "Guys, yell out so I can pinpoint your location." Wanda was with me, and the other woman was up front. One of the guys was looking around some shelving on a side wall to our right, and the other guy was near the bathrooms to our left and up front. I then asked, "Did anyone move the stool from the welding station?" A resounding no came from everyone. The guy inspecting the shelves said, "None of us have been over there since you." Uh-oh. Someone or something is playing games. Suddenly, Wanda yelled out, "If someone's there, make yourself known. In the name of Jesus, you are commanded to identify yourself." Then all hell broke loose. An audible growl was heard in the distance, and scratching that sounded like nails on a chalkboard, which I know made everyone cringe. Then, just ever so slightly, a breeze blew across the back of my neck, cold like someone took a breath to blow a hair out of their face. Quick but noticeable. I jerked around and saw nothing, but the smell of sulfur was a little stronger in that one spot right behind me. I slowly slid my hand into my pants pockets and found a small vial of holy water. I pulled it out, quietly popped off the cork, and instantly flung it into that space, with the sign of the cross announcing, In the name of Jesus Christ, I demand you identify yourself, demon. In a fraction of a second, something unseen moved away, bringing with it a rush of cold air and a voice grumbling in a language we didn't understand. My heart was now taking up space in my throat. That one was too close to me for comfort. Wanda and I walked up towards the bathrooms where one of the male team members was standing. He looked over to us and said, "I'm sorry, guys, but I gotta take a dump. I thought I could hold it, but that's not happening." His lower intestine was rumbling in displeasure, and off to the toilet he went. The bathroom door closed behind him, and Wanda and I split off. Her headache had become a full-blown migraine, so she headed outside for some fresh air and a pain pill. I kept asking routine questions in an effort to enlist a response. None came. The other team members met up with me just as we started discussing what happened to Wanda and I. Something bit me on the thigh, hard. I yelped, "Damn, that felt like a dog bite. What is going on here?" The woman with me said, "Pull your pants down so I can take a look. It could be a spider bite." Cringing at the thought, I obliged and pulled my jeans down to about mid-thigh. She gasped and said, "You're bleeding. It looks like teeth marks. But how's that possible? That's not a spider bite." My face began to feel flushed as my heart increased. I touched the sensitive area, and my fingers encountered something red and sticky. Blood. Pulling back out the holy water, I had her pour the remainder on the wound to cleanse it. It hurt like hell. I just hope it didn't become infected before I got home. I redress and shake it off as my heart rate returns to normal. As I watch the bathrooms, I hear, "What?" A pause then. "What? Stop effing with me. I'm trying to take a crap." I hear banging or loud knocking on something metal, then, "Who is it? I swear if I open this door, you've had it." I can see faint light underneath the door, but I don't open it. Standing at the closed door, my hackles rise again, and I know something just isn't right. Everyone else is accounted for. Then, in a softer tone, I hear, "What the hell?" I get a text that says, "D, where are you right now?" I reply, "I'm just outside the bathroom door. Why?" "Okay, this doesn't make sense. I just asked who it was, and it said it's me in what sounded like your voice." "But now you sound muffled," he responded. Okay, now I'm beginning to feel queasy. I reply, "Do the stall doors go down to the floor?" "Yeah, why?" "I want you to do 3 things. No, you must do 3 things." "Okay, what? You're scaring me now. This isn't funny." I can feel the sweat beating on my upper lip. 1, do not open the door. 2, do not look up. 3, be very, very quiet. Just listen, but don't respond. "I'll be there in a minute." "Okay, but hurry the F up." I told the others not to go into the bathroom, to stay where they were, and that I would be right back. I ran outside to the cars and told Wanda what was happening. She helped me gather some things and, at the last minute, shoved a box of salt into my arms. We go back inside, and I ready myself with the salt, a vial of holy water, and a small vial of dirt. The other members are now gathered, trying to figure out what was going on. I fill them in and tell them. I think a mimic has followed him into the bathroom. He said the voice sounded like me, but I never went in except for when we first got here, and that was just to check out the layout. And one of the rolling stools has disappeared. I don't want any of you to touch anything in there. There could be more than one, and it could be anything. Now, for those who don't know what a mimic is, it's an entity that can take the shape of any inanimate object and copy any person's voice. They are evil and void of reason and do not respond to commands. Think of your favorite chair becoming possessed and moving on its own. That's a mimic. They exist only to intimidate and create fear, but a person can be harmed if the object is touched while possessed, and they are not bound to any one particular object. It's been said that once touched, the entity can attach itself to the person, and then recreate itself as another object in a different location. I don't know if this is true, but I'm not about to try it and find out. I'm going to leave well enough alone. The door creaks when I open it, as most metal doors do. I flip the light on and look around, and I see in front of the back stall, about 3 feet away from the door, the missing stool. Looking like, well, a dirty shop stool. I text my guy and tell him not to speak or move, but that I was now inside. I douse the door with holy water in the sign of the cross and whisper a protection prayer. I open the box of salt and slowly pour a ring around the stool on the floor. being careful not to break it. I then take a vial of dirt, sprinkle a little in my hands, and throw it on the seat. Instantly the stool shifted backward about an inch, and a faint grey shadow darted from my right and out the running ceiling fan vent. I told him it was over, and when he opened the stall door he froze, staring at the stool, then up at me in wonder too. I instructed him to step around it, being careful not to disturb the salt, and we got out of there. We were halfway to the exit with the other team members when he suddenly turned around, ran to the bathroom again, and just as quickly exited out with a camera in his hand. I hadn't noticed, but he had a camera recording the stall and captured it all. To say watching a stool roll itself into place outside a stall door was creepy is putting it mildly. The owners didn't know what to think of the recordings. We caught the stool in the bathroom, the bite mark, and some of the noises on film, but not all. They decided to show it to the local priest to see about having the property blessed to ward off future attempts by said entity. But as far as I know, there have not been any other events. We didn't go to their home, or should I say, our group didn't go, but some others did, and it was just as interesting. But that's their story to tell. I guess the moral of this story is, trust your instincts. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean something is not there. Unseen evil can and will attack at any moment, so prepare yourself the best way you can. That brings us to the end of today's video. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. Before you go, please do hit the like button and subscribe. If you haven't done so already, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by signing up for my Patreon if you want. You don't have to, but it's there if you want the option. Get early access to the videos on Monday at once. Right, I think that's everything. And before we go, let's have today's question and answer of the day. Today's question is, what's your favorite kind of cereal? And do you put the milk in first or after? Now, personally speaking, I think the correct way to do it is to put your cereal in, then your milk, then you know how much milk you need. My favorite is Crunchy Nut cornflakes, but I have heard people that milk first, cereal second. Don't know why, but if that works for you, well, best of luck with it. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, we'll take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one came from Paranormal Stories 441, and it was about your favorite flavor of Skittles. Today's answer comes from Toria Mansfield. I buy the basic packs of Skittles and keep them around as free snacks at the library I volunteer at. I bought extra to hand out at Halloween because there are enough chocolate candies at that time. There's never too many chocolate candies. Also, bubblegum was very popular as well. Thank you very much for your answer, Toria Mansfield. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves.